selected. Before creating task component, we will create a central component which should hold similar functions. So both to-do and task component extended. So go ahead and open web.js view and create a component file. Let's call new component abstract.js. We will extend it normally from UI component. First of all, we will create variables for displaying modal. Create element variable with default value to do form. Then create options object array. Then specify type key with value pop-up. Responsive true. Inner scroll true. And title will be create to do. In trigger, we will specify element ID. Then add buttons with cancel button data. Next, create observable variable is pop-up visible. Add knockout dependency. And then specify ko.observable. And it should be false by default. Now open to-do component and replace UI component with abstract component. We have specified dot with /, which indicates that the component is in the same directory. So no long pause is needed here. Component instance will remain same. No need to specify HTML extension for template files. Now open todo.html template file. Then create a div element with the ID todo form and apply visible data binding to it. Now specify visible binding observable variable is pop-up visible. This will control the content visibility. Create some dummy content under the content area. Now open abstract component and create a function to display modal. First add jQuery dependency. Then add modal component dependency. Create a function get popup. Now let's create a variable popup obj with null value. This will help us avoiding to recreate the popup model every time when requested. If popup obj is null, then proceed with the logic and then return it. Let's create buttons variable. But before that, we need to move the variables inside popup object array. Create popup object array and paste the variables inside it. Now specify buttons value. This dot popup dot options dot buttons. We will convert the button options to an array containing object arrays inside. For text, specify cancel button text from button options. Then specify the class option. And finally specify the click function for button action. Let's create a custom function which should be called when cancel button click binding is applied. So go ahead and create onClose popup function. Inside this function, we will close current modal and return current class instance. Now replace our anonymous function with this dot close popup and then bind to allow click binding when custom action is performed. Next, we will specify a custom function when modal has been closed. Now create a function after bind close popup. We will set is popup visible variable to false. This will hide the modal content from frontend. Now replace the anonymous function with after bind close popup and apply bindings. Next, specify modal clause between handler and apply on-clause pop-up function binding. Now specify key event handlers event. This will contain an object array. Apply close modal on escape key. So modal should close when escape key is pressed. Next, we will create open function. This will trigger when modal is opened or displayed. Create a function on open pop-up. Let's keep it empty for now. Later we can extend it from both task and to-do components and apply logic accordingly. Replace anonymous function with on open pop-up function and apply binding. Finally, create and assign modal to pop-up obj variable. Specify modal options and the element in second parameter. Now open todo.html template file. Under Actions toolbar, create a div with class todo-action. Then create an anchor element with classes action and edit, and then apply data binding. Specify href attribute binding with value hash. Then add click binding. Since we are inside loop, we cannot directly call component function here. So we will use $parent with dot before a function. This means the component function is parent to the current loop. And specify function edit to do. Then create span element and specify text using text binding. Now let's create edit to do function in to do component. If we want to refer current component, we can do it when our edit action is triggered because the click binding only knows about the current element. So we will create a variable to do obj before component and initialize it inside initialize constructor function. Now create is to do visible observable variable and set it to false. Whenever edit to do function is called, we will set is to do visible value to true. So go ahead and add to do obj dot is to do visible and set it to true. Next, we will add subscription to is to do visible and apply a custom logic inside. Specify component instance in target. If value is true, then open the model. Specify this.get popup to retrieve the model object and then call open model function. Now we will override after bind close popup function inside to do component. Call the parent logic first. Now set is to do visible variable value to false. If we click edit button from to do item, we see pop-up model is shown for every item as expected. Now open to do index layout file. Let's add some text fields to the model. So begin with adding children node first. Create to do dash field set node with XSI type array. Now create UI component node. Specify display area. Additional dash field sets. Next, create UI component children node. Create title node. Under title node, create component node and specify element abstract component. Magento_UI JS form element abstract. We will use this component to display the form element. Now create config node with XSI type array. Here we will define field basic configuration. Create custom scope node. Custom scope is used to group elements within a single form. Let us set custom scope value to todo. Next, specify the template. Specify the template path UI form field. This path is an alias of magenta underscore UI /form /field template file. Then we create element template node. This path will be rendered inside main template file and is a template of the particular field type, for example, input or select field. So let's specify input element template path. This path is an alias of magenta UI form element input.html template file. Now we will create data scope node. The data scope value consists of custom scope dot field name. So specify todo.title. Next we need to display the field labels. Create label node. Specify the label title. Next create sort order node. And specify field sorting order. Optionally we can create placeholder node. Create validation node to introduce field validations. Now create required entry node to mark field as required. Specify XSI type boolean and then set its value to true. Admin words validation node and set a number value 1. And finally create max text length validation node. Let's specify a value 200. Now open todo.html template file. Replace the heading with a form. Create field set element with classes field set and todo. Then add attribute data binding. Specify data dash has required as a key attribute and required fields as a value. Then create inline binding and render additional field sets area. Flush the cache and clear the static or generated content. Reload the page. Now the field is being displayed in pop-up model as expected. Let's take a look at element inspector. Switch to console tab and clear the log. Let's debug field component. We can do that by creating UI Registry instance. In browser console, create variable and assign UI Registry instance to it. Require.js and specify UI Registry as parameter. Create variable and assign it component using UI Registry instance. Inside parameter, we will specify the path to title component. Let's go back to our layout file. We see the first UI component is km-todo-scope. And next is todo component. Then todo-field set is the next UI component. And finally, we have title component. So the parameter will be km-todo-scope .todo.field set .title. Let's try printing component on console. We see UI class consisting of several properties and functions. We can set component value directly as well. Component dot value and set your custom text. The text is reflected on title input field as expected. Similarly, setting empty text will trigger the validations.